Welcome back to the show, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us as we take a couple breaks this month. We took last week off. We're doing the show this week, and we'll be taking off the week of Christmas. It'll be the first Christmas as a dad for Mr. James Nichols here. How have you been? What's it like leading up to the holidays with a kid for the first time?
It's been hectic as all heck. Super busy all the time. I open my eyes, I start working, I don't stop until I close my eyes, and sometimes I stay up later than I'm supposed to because I have to catch up on writing and stuff. So things have been good. I can't complain. But I'm tired. I need a break at some point. I guess the Christmas break coming up in the NHL schedule is good. I get a couple days off for the holidays and stuff. Maybe I can catch up on some rest, but not likely with a 5-month-old.
Yeah, I forget it's been only 5 months somehow. It seems like it's been a little bit longer, although the NHL season so far seems it's only 33 games for the Islanders. It does seem like it's been going on for a little bit longer than that. It might just be the type of season they're having where it's like there's no kind of consistency. They're not really ever, the one win streak, they were rolling a little bit. It seemed like a couple weeks in a row really got moving, and then they took their foot off the gas considerably. But before we get to the Islanders proper, there were two instances last night, Alexander Ovechkin and Cale Makar, in the game against the Islanders with the Avalanche, where the players, Ovechkin and Makar, waved off a penalty.
Yeah.
I've never seen that ever, let alone twice in the same night from superstars in the game, which is interesting. And that was a 0-0 game for the Avalanche and Makar, and I don't exactly recall when that was in the game for the Capitals, although it may have been against Detroit or Chicago or something like that. So maybe not that critical of a game, but either way, the Washington Capitals are trying to get back into that wild card spot and giving the Islanders all sorts of trouble. What do you make of that? That's got to be one of the craziest things I've seen.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where I look at those two teams, obviously that both in the playoffs last season, but when you look at where they are right now, the Avalanche are ridden with injuries. You could say similar about the Capitals. They're without Backstrom, they're without Wilson, right? So they're missing some key players. They're both fighting their way to survive until their injuries figure themselves out, or once they finally get into and clinch a playoff spot, which is obviously not anytime soon, right? We're not even halfway through the season. So I look at that and I say, man, these are two players who are, I guess they take so much pride in winning that they're like, no, I don't want to win like that. That's not what happened. And we're gonna win the right way, I guess. Right. So I that's the only way I can really wrap my head around it, because like you said, about 30 years I'm watching hockey. Similar for you, right? I've never seen that before. Never. Majority of the time, players will just be like, yep, thanks. I'll take those 2 minutes. We'll go to the man advantage. But these two players, I don't know. I guess they're just so proud of, how they win and maybe being the best that they don't want to cheat themselves. Is that fair to say?
Maybe. I mean, it's really not a hockey player thing to do, where it does happen occasionally. There have been players that, a stick goes near their face but doesn't actually hit it, and they throw their head back. And I think there's a certain amount of reaction, like you're moving your head out of the way. But there have been times where they grab their face and they kind of exaggerate. That's not a typical thing,
right?
Most of the time, there aren't too many of those unsportsmanlike penalties or even coincidentals for a dive and things like that. Although it was prevalent for a little bit, I think they had just instituted that kind of call and called it a little bit heavier. But I can't recall anything like that. It's not quite as bad as a goalie being like, oh yeah, that was a goal. It's inconclusive, but nah, I was there. It was a goal.
Yeah.
That would never happen. I don't know what would be going through that goalie's head, unless it was like Jordan Binnington trying to tank his own team, which seems like one of those like crazy things that he would try to concoct there. But it's certainly not anything. Even this, like, power plays are super important, especially in a tight game with the Islanders and the Avalanche. Um, that could have been a difference maker for them, and even with a depleted lineup, the Avalanche is still a really good offensive team. So um, definitely wild. I also want to talk about Ovechkin. I didn't put this in the notes. I totally forgot until right now.
I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to say something about it.
800 goals.
Yeah.
It's I think for a long time it was he'll never catch Gretzky. He'll never catch Gretzky. It was crazy, and everyone kind of dismissed it. And then all of a sudden, that tune changed, like, kind of out of nowhere. Like, all of a sudden, he was closer to 800, and you're like, oh wow, he's just gonna keep playing until he does it. Like, he only needs this season and maybe 2.5 more. That's like 30 a season, right? Like,
I'll tell you what.
I don't talk about 50 goals a season. Talking about like a bad down season for Ovechkin and like 33 goals a season.
I'll tell you what. I was listening to Frank Saravalli the other day, and he said, "Put it in the books that he'll have it by Christmas 2024." That's not next Christmas. That's not the Christmas coming up next week. That's the one after that.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's I kind of zoomed out a little bit because like that had happened a few days ago, and then you watch Messi win the World Cup, and I started thinking about in our lifetime the amount of greatest players ever. Granted, like when you really think about sports on the whole, it's really about 100 years. So you're going to see some of the greatest in a generation, but you just did never think that it's going to be every sport. And in basketball, you've seen 2 of them nearly, or 3 of them really.
True.
And I'm not a huge basketball fan, but it probably is not crazy to be, Jordan, Kobe, LeBron James. Like, that's not a crazy threesome for that the last 30 years or so, or 35 years or so of like the greatest basketball players. In soccer too, you've had Messi, you've had Ronaldo. Maradona's a little bit older. I'm not exactly sure when he played, but you've had 3 of those. There've been baseball has been from Aaron Judge, Barry Bonds, and whatever you want to say about the asterisks next to that. And it's crazy that it's kind of happened in our lifetime. We've just seen Gretzky do it, which was unthinkable, and then somebody did it again, and like passing Gordie Howe, and then they might actually reach Gretzky.
Yep.
And I think it's much more of when and not if at this point. He will get to like 901 at whatever point in the season, and then leave the ice. He might retire that day.
And one of my favorite things to hear about it too is that like there's just a ton of talk about this right now. It's obviously the hot topic, and the thing you keep hearing is Wayne Gretzky's perspective is he just keeps cheering him on. Like, I really hope, like, he really hopes that he does it. And I just think that's so cool. Like, he's like, I want you to break my record. That would be so cool. And I mean, I forget the statistic, but the next closest to pace at like, whoever would pace next to be the closest to break Gretzky's record after Ovechkin, I think it's like McDavid or Draisaitl. In terms of goal pace, and they still fall like 200 or 300 goals short, maybe more than that, honestly. And that just goes to show you how rare it is that this thing that Ovechkin's doing right now is, and how incredible really it is. And I tweeted out the other day when he I think when he tied Gordie Howe, that greatest goal scorer of all time. And a lot of fans, Islander fans specifically, took exception with that and said, you're forgetting about Mike Bossy. And I wasn't. I didn't forget about Mike Bossy. And the fact of the matter is that he was, an excellent goal scorer. Take Ovechkin out of the picture. I'm here for that. I'll listen to it. I think he could be. But Ovechkin's in the picture. He's not in the picture. And he did it in a time where it's so much harder to score a goal. Not taking anything away from Mike Bossy. Incredible goal scorer. One of the best ever. Possibly number 2. But Alex Ovechkin is the greatest goal scorer of all time. There's no doubt in my mind.
Such a huge part of all of this is staying healthy, whether it's on your own, something that your body just breaks down, or it's a serious injury, or whatever the case is. You look at, Yager was ridiculous, and he was a, point a game, or better than a point a game for, his entire career. He almost hit 2,000 points and is, second all time in points. And that's not where Ovechkin necessarily is going to end up. And there's a lot of arguments between, the Lemieux Gretzky argument is going to be the same as Crosby Ovechkin.
Yeah.
Because there was a player that got hurt and then had a better point per game, but Crosby wasn't the best at any one thing. He was one of the best all around players. You can, that's where you put somebody like a Marc Messier was always that player to me, where for his time period, he was somebody that did everything. He was a leader. He was a fighter. He could score. He, had got points. It was the complete kind of package. He was much more like Gordie Howe, simply just probably the era that he was in. And that's kind of, Ovechkin is going to be the greatest goal scorer of all time. Simply by the numbers. You can't really compare that to Bossy, but I see the Crosby Ovechkin comparison with Gretzky and Lemieux, just because they have similar point totals, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But Crosby's played considerably less games than Ovechkin
because of injuries. Yeah, he had those, he dealt with a bunch of concussion issues. Remember that time period when he just missed so much time for the Penguins, and there was a legitimate question about his career. Like,
oh yeah, that's what I mean.
Ending.
That's exactly what I mean.
And good on him for making sure to find a way back. And look what he's doing this season, man. I mean, he's just playing at, what is he, 36 now, I believe. And not that that's old. I'm only 6 years younger than him, but it's just the fact that in terms of hockey, him doing what he's doing right now, having this season where, if I'm not mistaken, he's like on his best points per game pace in his career right now, is just incredible. He's helping lead the Penguins back from the basement, because they fell off, but now they're really hot, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But the Penguins are doing crazy things. Speaking of the Penguins too, we haven't spoken in 2 weeks because we didn't have a show last week, but Chris Letang, holy crap.
I cannot understand how they're letting him play, and how he just decided, fine, like they're doing the tests that I don't understand it.
It was one of those things where they said hockey isn't going to make it worse. Playing hockey isn't going to make it worse. So I guess, if the experts in that department of, that I don't know what to categorize it as. I don't have that medical terminology, stored up here, but the experts who approved him to go and said, it's not going to make it worse, I guess you trust them, and I say it all the time. One of my favorite people to listen to is Jeff Marek, and he put it really well by saying he's a hockey player with an MMA fighter's mentality, where he goes into the corner after every round and he's ready to get up and go, back into the ring and finish the fight. He's never going to back down. And I just thought that was like an incredible analogy. So it's just scary as all hell to think about him having a stroke, missing only 12 days, not 12 games, 12 days, which is like maybe 5 or 6 games, and then coming back into the lineup. And I'm pretty sure he had a couple points in his first game back. And it's just like, holy crap. Like what a story, but also I feel weird about it. But at the same time, feel awesome about it, and I just don't know. I don't know. It's just like this is another one of those rare instances, like Ovechkin, like on the verge of breaking Gretzky's record, is the same rareness as a player having a stroke and playing 12 days after it. And not only that, Chris Letang wanted to play the following day.
Yeah, I understand hockey's not going to make it worse. It's not, I can't see it helping necessarily. I kind of just think about, he doesn't. It's not the money, right? Like he's not playing
No,
because he needs money. Um, you gotta have a life after this. Like I'm sure he has a family, even if it's not his own kids, just like his his parents or siblings or like who, the people around him. Just kind of continue to put yourself at risk like that. Like I don't know if is it just like one bad hit away from something else. And this is his second stroke. This isn't even the first
right.
one. And that's where like that's what really raises the alarm. The first one you're like, all right, depending on what age and what caused it, you kind of do your thing. Like almost fine. You can almost kind of it's still very weird. I don't know how I'm going to give that a pass, but I suppose in this crazy world, let's do that. Let's give him a pass. The second time, dude, it's
The
not worth it.
stipulation,
You have your 3 cups. You've been like an
yeah.
incredible defenseman forever. Like I don't know. Like I would very seriously either take your time or like that's it. You gotta like walk
The
away.
justification too was that this was a far less severe one than the first one. So they were like, it wasn't, it was one of those things where he felt like something was up, so he got checked out rather than something detrimental happening to him. Maybe like caught it early or something. Um, but yeah, either way, I totally understand the perspective. Like, yikes, you're 37 and like I don't know. Do you keep doing this? Like he also does have, I mean, which doesn't matter at that point. Life is life. You choose life over hockey, but I think he's got like 5 years left on his contract. I don't know if that has anything to
It's
do with the way he's.
a newish deal, if I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken.
yeah. So I don't know if that has anything to do with the way he was thinking about it, but I don't know. Either way, what a warrior, but at the same time, scary as all hell.
Absolutely scary as all hell. And just to like kind of put a punctuation on that with Crosby and Ovechkin, Sidney Crosby's played 1,139 games. Ovechkin's played 1,308. Sidney Crosby has 3 more points than Ovechkin.
Yeah, and that's almost 2.5 seasons more that Ovechkin has played than Crosby.
Yeah, and that's their goals are wildly different, 800 to 534, and goals you pay for goals. Ovechkin is the person that you want on your team, and
Yeah,
including the playoffs and different things like that. The teams around them were different over the course of their career, and that's why you have one player with 3 cups and another player with just one, and it took them a long time to get through the Penguins. The East has been formidable for a really long time outside of like LA Kings and um, Chicago winning. It's been a lot of teams from the East and growing teams. Like you had to go even if the Lightning didn't win, you had to go through the Lightning. You had to go through um, the Penguins. I guess in St. Louis too, as they do recently. But um, yeah, when I think about the two of them and that argument, it's very interesting.
yeah,
Just considering the how, and then when you're thinking about Gretzky catching Gretzky's record, Ovechkin missed 2 seasons with lockouts. He should have played a season earlier because he was drafted in that year.
yeah.
Um, you know, 1.5 lockouts, two,
It was
like,
two.
and then shortened seasons, and
Yeah,
with COVID and this and less games, and it's it's really wild to kind of like give it that perspective. What I want to jump to now is a really broad question to start off the show because we have a lot that we can kind of dive into specifics, and I'm sure in our memories we'll kind of like go back into some specific games. But I wanted to start with what are the New York Islanders, and that could mean anything. It could be they're good, they're bad, they're in the mushy middle, they're lost. Like you can pick your adjective there. But that's the question that I've been grappling with as of late, just considering
Yeah.
where they've been in the month of December. And I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that mushy middle I think is accurate. They've fallen out of the playoff picture. Right? I believe.
No, they're in the second wild
Oh,
card
they are.
right
They're in the
now.
second wild
And
card. Okay.
and it's the as you said, the teams around them um have played better, but can continue.
Yeah. So Washington's playing a little better. Pittsburgh's playing well. And you have to be careful too, because Florida's not out of a playoff spot right now. I don't anticipate that remaining. Um,
And they're
Detroit,
behind Buffalo though.
they're behind Buffalo. Detroit's up and down. Buffalo's up and down. So it's they have to be careful here. To answer your question, what are the New York Islanders like? I think your mushy middle ground is accurate. They're just a team, and this is the simplest way I think I could put it. They're just a team that's heavily reliant on their goaltending. When Ilya Sorokin is going, so are the Islanders. When Ilya Sorokin's not going, the Islanders are not. And to boot, they have an excellent 1B in Semyon Varlamov, who is playing very well this season. To your credit, you had said if he just reverses the roles of how he played last season, they'll be great. They'll be in great shape, and he has done that. But lately they've hit some rough patches, and they lost last night 1-0 in a shootout on the back of Ilya Sorokin. Immaculate performance, but he had like 3 or 4 starts prior to that one where he allowed 4 or more goals, which is rare for him. So
Oh, it was 0-4 and the numbers were
yeah,
really bad for why it was like some stretch of games because Varlamov had won some games in between, so the
yeah,
Islanders weren't on that losing streak. And just to kind of uh you brought up Varlamov and how I said last year he went 10-17-2 and all he needs to do is go 17-10-2,
yeah,
and that's a completely different team. He won 10 games last season. He's already won 8.
yeah. There you go. So
Right, and it's like that's what's keeping them afloat to a certain degree because
correct.
it also gives Sorokin like he's human.
Oh
He's
yeah,
gonna lose some games. The team was gonna try to not try. They had to figure out their new head coach and go through that process in the beginning of the season. So it's not like it's unexpected for them to have sputtered a little bit. 30 games in the season, 30 plus games in the season. It's a kind of a different conversation at this point.
yeah. Right. So, and that's really just the best way I could sum it up, right? Because we know that they're not going to, they have been scoring more goals this year because of the system that they play in, but they're also sacrificing more, and you're seeing that, in especially the last few games, minus the one that they played last night. So as
I think
Sorokin
it's more
goes,
bad plays though. I've said that all season. I really
yeah,
don't
sure,
think it's the system, and like there's definitely a risk reward factor. And Noah Dobson certainly mentioned that himself.
yes,
That that the high danger things, and he had knocked up, I forget what game it was. He had knocked a puck down at the blue line, and it could have went the other way at the end of a
yes,
power play and for a breakaway, and he stopped and he recognized that. I think Steven Rosner had the quote or somebody after the game, and there are definitely those moments. But it's more of like the mistakes. But we've kind of beaten that horse to death this
right,
season.
right, exactly. So, but that's as much as I can say is as Sorokin goes, so do the Islanders, and that's who they are.
Yeah, I even my train of thought went as far as to try to figure out what their new identity was. I think if you're going to hear it from Lambert or Lamoriello, nothing changed, right? They definitely wanted more offense. That's what they were concentrating on, in that coaching strategy change leading up to and in the beginning of the season. But they're just not the same, and I think that might be where some of that lack of focus is. They are trying to figure out who they are. They're going through this weird process of evolving their whole team game in a different direction, and that might be, with the way that season's kind of gone, and they like I said, they slipped down quite a bit from second, going between second and third in the division to now in the second wild card. Um, it's definitely going to come down to they just need to make the playoffs, and then I think their old identity will come out a little bit. I think this is a veteran group who can kind of lock it down. It's really just a question if they can get there and kind of
Yeah.
find a way to get some consistency, because you're losing games, 2 games to the Arizona Coyotes. Um, they seem to raise their game to better opponents, and they're playing way down to others. Kevin Kurz wrote about that recently as well. Like, it's stuff that you just can't do, and especially when, yes, there's 50, 49 games left, or whatever. So, plenty to go. But when injuries start piling up, that all of a sudden becomes an excuse. But really, before that, there weren't any. And even frankly, with them, there aren't any, because this is a team that is more than the sum of its parts. It should be able to withstand that. And you do see at the bottom of the lineup that your Clutterbuck goes down. Fashing is really doing a good job. Um, Holmstrom's been okay in kind of filling in for Bailey. I don't think he's worse than Josh Bailey has been. So you're able to kind of plug and play some players there, and it that's not the issue. Like, it's even, yes, Palmieri hurts because he was having a good start to the season. You definitely miss his goals, and it does weaken your top 6, or even your middle 6, because he was playing with Parise and Pajot. And that was just a very good veteran line. Something I said last summer that I was looking forward to seeing if that worked out, because Lambert being able to kind of rely on them for a bunch of different things. They're a little bit of a Swiss Army knife. And we spoke the last episode that we had around Thanksgiving. Parise is not only the best value forward, dollars and cents, but he's might be the best all around forward for the Islanders. And in his short tenure is, I think, blown everyone's expectations out of the water, and he's just played. I don't know where he is on the goals chart at this point. I'm gonna check now, but yeah, he's got 10 goals already.
Right.
And then he's one of 4 players with 10 goals, and Brock Nelson has 15 in 33 games.
Yes, he does.
And like, you look at that stuff and you think that they'd be in a little bit better shape, but it's really the rest of their game. It's the power play, hot and cold. It's the penalty kill, really, mostly been cold lately, frankly. But then you see them beat the Vegas Golden Knights 5-2. I don't know how many empty net goals there were, but just assuming there's one, that's a great game. Like, that's a game that you can feel good about them winning. And I was listening to I was going to mention this later, but we've kind of gone out of order, and that's totally fine. Chris Bott on Hockey Night in New York said something interesting. He said one of the biggest positives of this team is that every time it looks like they're going on a downside, like going on the downside and not playing well, or they don't win this particular game, like to the Arizona Coyotes or something like that, they manage to win a game that almost like resurrects the fans' spirits and their own spirits about the season. And then because they win the game, and you're like, oh, they're 13-2. Like, that's a good record. Like, that was what you were harping on me. Like, they have a good record. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And just like in the grand scheme of things, and I can definitely respect that they find a way to bounce back. I wrote an article recently. I feel like they're running out of time to really figure that out, because, as we alluded to earlier, teams around them picked it up. Pittsburgh fell off a little bit, but I mean, they're 7-2-1 in their last 10 games. The Islanders are 3-5-2, and they're losing games in overtime or shootout, and that's fine. They're picking up points. Rather that loss column not continue to add up every single time they lose a game. I don't mind that one bit. But it's the team around them that are catching up. The Rangers are on a 7-game winning streak. They're 8-1-1. The Capitals are getting healthier. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10. The Islanders are the only one in and around that, really at the top of the division. Jersey's the only other one. Wow, this is actually kind of incredible. Everybody that's in playoff position in the East, actually even going down to Buffalo, who's 2 places out, have won 7 games in their last 10 or more, except the Islanders and the Devils. I mean, and Toronto's lost the last 2, but they're still 7-2-1.
Right.
In the last little bit. Tampa Bay woke up. They've won 5 in a row. So like the it's sorting itself out. And when you have nights, I think even like tonight, where like New Jersey is playing Carolina, the Rangers are playing in Pittsburgh, it is a no-win situation for the Islanders. Nobody can beat a team around them, and they've played a game or 2 more than some of them teams around them, or the teams that they're behind in the wild card. So they've kind of put themselves in a bad position, even with an 18-13 and 2 record. Are there big concerns other than like, their record and like their recent play? Anything stick out from the last couple of weeks for you, as far as concerns and things that they just need to kind of figure out moving forward?
Just the special teams and health, really. I mean, health needs to persist. And you can't really change that, right? There's not much they can do about injuries. But special teams, I mean, they're not scoring on the power play as much as they should, and they're not killing penalties as much as they should. So they definitely need to be. We've known forever that they're a 5-on-5 team, but they need to be better on both the man advantage and the penalty kill in order to be successful. The best teams in the league, that's when they take advantage, right? And it's incredible to me that their penalty kill looks the way it does right now after having started off so well. I get that teams figure you out, but you got to be able to adjust. So, yeah, that's the crux of it, really. Special teams and health has to be improved. You can't do much about the latter, but you can do something about the former.
Hockey fans, light the lamp this winter with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. New customers can bet just $5 pre-game moneyline on any NHL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. If that wasn't enough excitement for you, you can turn smaller bets into bigger ones with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more for your shot at an even bigger payout. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, use promo code THPN, bet $5 on any NHL team to win their game, and get $150 in free bets if they do. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
The goalie situation's tough. Varlamov seems like he's out. They recalled Schneider for the game against Colorado. Presumably, Schneider will be backing up Sorokin at Madison Square Garden.
They said they don't anticipate Varlamov to be out long, but
or any of the players, frankly. Pelech has not resumed skating. It doesn't sound like any of the rest of them have either, and that's Clutterbuck and Palmieri at this point, who that hit that he received kind of blindsided after just coming back in his first game.
Yeah, tough.
That's one of those things I think you and I have talked about. It's just like I don't know how you can have respect for one another as players. That's just a meaningless hit. Like that's not finishing your check. That's you're trying to hurt him. And Matt Martin, I think, made a comment to that effect. Somebody had asked him if they had targeted him a little bit. I believe he said yes.
Who threw the hit? I forgot.
I was hoping that you knew. I can't remember.
What game was it?
That's also a great question. It's a problem when you have 2 weeks.
I feel like it was against Arizona, right?
That feels right. I don't think it was against Boston.
Yeah, I think it was against Arizona. I think it was like O'Brien or something like that. One of their grinders. Either way, irrelevant. It's tough. You don't want to see that for Palmieri, especially because he's actually been good this season. Not that he wasn't good last season. We know he was like really, really snake bitten, but he was doing well for them. in the time that he did play, like 6 goals, 9 points in 21 games. But yeah, tough break for Palmieri there.
Yeah, definitely. I was looking at natural stat trick before because I was going through and because sometimes the underlying numbers tell you like a little bit different story and are their expected goals good and their shot totals are down, but like the Trotz Islanders, they were getting a lot of high danger chances and limiting other teams. That doesn't seem to be the case either, and maybe that's slipped as of late, but certainly in December, you can tell that it's not just that the other teams are getting more scoring chances, but they're getting better scoring chances. And I think
Yeah.
part of that is that's causing Sorokin to kind of back up in his net a little bit. He's not challenging quite as much as we've seen him. And it might just be because his confidence is shot and he's getting shelled 30, 40 shots a game. Um, I don't know that he's tired. I really think that he's just getting a lot of work, and this is really his first go at being the number one in the NHL and not splitting that time. Um,
Yeah, you know what's crazy too? Like I'm looking at the numbers now, like you said, the underlying numbers in terms of expected goals for. Like they had a 39.8 last night in the 1-0 loss, and they had a 32.9 in the 5-2 win against the Vegas Golden Knights. So like, it's one of those things where it's quality over quantity. I guess in that sense. But then they lose 5-4 to the Coyotes, 36.71%. And then I look at like there's games where, for instance, the Predators, right? When they played really well against the Predators, they got goalied by UC Soros. They had a 73.2 expected goals for in that game. And UC Soros played out of his mind, or actually, it might not have been Soros, it might have been Lankinen. Whoever was in net for the Predators played out of their mind, and the Islanders couldn't find a way to win that game. And it's just so interesting to see that because there are plenty of games here where they were on top of the goal share, like the 7-4 loss to the Blues. They had a 58.01 expected goals for percentage, and they're not winning those games. So
their high danger chances are on the season are not good. They're allowing way more
yeah.
than they're getting. And even Lambert said after the Avalanche game, in a quote, "I thought we generated some, but we at times passed up some shots, which we can't do, but certainly we got ourselves into areas at times." And I've said that I've harped on Barzal being a little bit of the epitome of that problem this season for the Islanders, but they continued against the Avalanche.
Right.
Did they get 20 shots in the whole game? Maybe low 20s. It was like 20 something to like 40 something. It was a huge spread
Yeah,
between them
I know
and the
Mikko
Avalanche.
Rantanen had 10 shots himself um against the Islanders, but it was 46-26. It was 20 shot differential.
Yeah, and that's in the past that doesn't concern you, but it's the quality of the shots that I think is concerning on both sides. What they're allowing and what they're producing on the other end. You're just not getting that quality. I mean, and then when they do, Beauvillier comes down the wing. It may have even I don't think they got a shot in overtime against the Avalanche, but in another opportunity, Beauvillier just hits the goalie right in the chest. And it was a good opportunity that the puck goes and kind of just squirts out after that. There's not a good rebound opportunity, and they're not their offense just doesn't have any juice, I guess. And that's where like I'm curious again. I didn't put this in the notes, but as happy as Lamoriello will say outwardly, how he's happy about the offense and zooming out all the way, obviously you can be happy with where it is, but it's not winning them games, right? Like they're not quite playing that like high flying game where they're just going to beat teams 5-3 on a regular basis. Like that's
Right.
not what's happening. Pelech doesn't sound like he'll be out that long. I wouldn't be surprised maybe if he's back against the Rangers or maybe just doesn't come back for that game and takes an extended break, some extra time with the short Christmas break that they have. But this, as a topic that I know you like to get into, as far as like trade targets, a lot of noise around Brock Besser and Bo Horvat on the forward group from Vancouver. Um, Jacob Chikrin is having a heck of a season. I know, he you keep bringing him up, and I questioned in the beginning of the season that I don't know how you make that type of trade. He's not going to be playing for a while. Then he came back, and I still said give him some time. And then a few weeks ago, he was like over a point a game, and I just saw a tweet. Oh yeah, it's 14 games, 3 goals, 10 assists, 11 even strength points, playing 22 minutes a night. And I don't know what you like. I don't know, like, long term, if that contract is worth it. It doesn't seem like Robin Salo is the immediate answer. He's still so young. I'm not disappointed in that at all. Defensemen take a lot more time. He's playing okay. I think some would even say better than maybe in that first initial stint. He's definitely getting there. It's probably just having NHL reps at this point. Aho had a nice goal the other night. I believe maybe that was Vegas. But he, all around, he's been playing well. Scott Mayfield's getting a lot of defensive zone starts. He's playing a lot of minutes, especially with Pelech out. Just a quick side note. So I say Pelech, and I'm reading it. I've said his name a million times, but every once in a while, Elliot Friedman will say Pelech.
Yeah.
And there's other players. So, like, in my head, because that's how I hear it most of the time when it's not like an Islanders broadcast, I had to like make sure that I'm not gonna say it wrong. It's incredibly frustrating.
It's all Elliot's fault, and I know he's obviously listening to this right now, but he trolls the hockey community by purposely mispronouncing or misspelling abbreviations for teams. Like, did you see? And he did this on purpose. Did you see how he wrote Vancouver the other day?
No, what was it this time?
He wrote VCR. And everybody was like, "Oh well, the next team that they play is DVD." It's just like, oh my god,
It's
like,
not even a good joke.
He did it on purpose. No, it's not. It's a horrible joke, but like, he did it on purpose for that reaction. I think it's hilarious. I love it, because he, obviously, like, Calgary. I think this is what started it. Calgary. He would always put CLY and it's CGY, or no, he would put CAL and it's CGY. And everybody would be like, do it right. And like, now he does it on purpose. But
this has been years.
Yeah,
he's been doing this for a long time.
I think it's hilarious. I love it.
But yeah, so every time I say Pelech, in my head, know that it's Pelech, because I've just heard people say it wrong enough times, and it's just stuck in my head. But I don't think Chikrin's a replacement on that aspect to it, and you hope that Pelech is going to come back sooner than later. And then I don't think they have the assets for both of those things.
Yeah,
I expect something. If I think to Lamorel's tenure with the Islanders, the in-season moves happen.
Yeah, they do.
If they're in a position, so like, this is actually when I'm getting excited, and maybe we all just should have learned this and not got our hopes up over last summer. It would have been a lot easier to just move on and be like, no, he doesn't do that. He doesn't make a big move in the summer. He does it he does it in season if the team deserves it, this and that. So it might be better to really start kind of ramping up and seeing what's going on. I know that there were scouts at certain games. Was it Elliot Friedman had said recently that there were some Islander folks at a Vancouver game?
Yeah. So and that's what I was going to mention quickly was, Andrew Gross put out a pretty good piece the other day about some potential trade targets. Not that he's necessarily hearing anything, but he did mention some names that would maybe help out the Islanders here. And obviously the big names he mentions are Patrick Kane, Bo Horvat, and Timmo Meier. I've been on the Bo Horvat train. Put him as your 2C, or 1C, really. Depends on where you categorize Matthew Barzal. And put Barzal on Nelson's wing. I want more of that. But, Timmo Meier is also intriguing. But those are expensive players. And he did a good job, meaning Gross, did a good job of narrowing down some cheaper options too, which narrowed down to Anthony Duclair, who, a couple of seasons ago, I was saying, get this guy. I don't know why nobody's given him a home yet. And on the back end, even a Shane Gostisbehere from Arizona as well would be cheaper than Jacob Chikrin, and could provide maybe that stability on the third pair where Salo remains, but isn't really clicking yet.
Yeah, I mean, just on that kind of thing, I don't know. Gostisbehere has kind of been all over the place. He's at $4.5 million. He's 29. He's the UFA. He's not necessarily somebody I would expect Lemro to lock up. Like he would actually be a rental, which
I think it would be pure rental.
Yeah, which is that's the rare part. But he's got 20. Gostisbehere has 23 points in 30 games. He had 51 last season.
Yeah, he was great last season. Yeah,
and some of his best numbers in a number of years. Granted, some of them are shorter seasons and this and that, but someone's got to score. The Islanders' defense is still tops in the league. Putting the puck in the net and providing those opportunities. I wouldn't mind if they went into the middle there and started locking it down and started having a better, Corsi and all that kind of stuff, like limiting opportunities and blocking shots and all of that, and just locking it down better in their defensive zone. But yeah, that's definitely a cheaper option from Arizona. I think part of the issue with Arizona is that they do actually need like dollars on the roster. So I wonder what it looks like where you're giving up an actual player. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Like, is it as I don't know what Arizona's like actual plan is year over year. Because you can't just be like, oh, I don't like this player on the Islanders, dump them. Bailey's been playing like horse shit, and still, like he hasn't really, obviously has these little moments here and there, but it doesn't, like, by and large, hasn't played very well. But he's benefiting from Palmieri being out, and even then, he's not always been in the lineup. Holmstrom's getting time, and
right.
Fashing's in for Clutterbuck, so that also gets Bailey a chance in the lineup. So you'd think like, oh, one more year of Bailey, like they need the dollars on that roster. So that's kind of part of the problem. Like you can't trade just a prospect and add a player to an Arizona, whether it's for Chikrin or otherwise. Like
right,
they actually need a roster player with dollars attached to them to make that work, which is complicated because if they don't want your players with a high price tag in return, then it just doesn't work. I mean, that's something Lamorello says. It takes two teams to do it, so it's it's obviously more complicated.
It's interesting to look at Arizona's situation because obviously they still need a building, but the plan for them to begin to compete, whenever that is whenever that building does open. So obviously they need the building first. They do believe that that's going to happen, but then once that building opens its doors, the plan is to have a competitive team on the ice, and they have a plethora of prospects who are supposed to be, the next wave of talent coming through, like the Logan Coolies and the Dylan Gunthers. They have some good guys over there already, but to grow as a team and everything, it's probably going to take 2 to 3, maybe 4 years for that building to open. I think they have like 5 years with this agreement in Mullet Arena, but then when the doors open, they want a competitive team. So you could see a situation, all this to say, you could see a situation where they take Josh Bailey, and I'm not, I'm just spitballing here, but you could see a situation where they would take a Josh Bailey because they have some time before they're going to be competitive, but they need the dollars.
Yeah, I mean, it would be Bailey plus something just as a
right.
Some extra there, but
I'm starting to wonder, is there a real possibility here that, because according to a couple of different people around the league, the Islanders have checked in on a, Bo Horvat. They have remained in the conversation on a Jacob Chikrin. I'm starting to really wonder if it's possible that we see Atu Ratu involved in a trade. I think he's still the prized possession for the Islanders, but if they want, someone like Bo Horvat, who's got, by the way, 20 plus goals already this season, you have to give to get. So,
yeah, and Lemerall said as much recently. He had an opportunity to speak to the media and kind of discuss that it was a similar line than what we've heard, and you have to give to get, and obviously any opportunity to make your roster better and all of that. I mean, Horvat is he 27?
yep.
I mean, you can get 5 or 6 years out of him. And I got roasted through our account. I tweeted something about trading for Horvat and signing him to some deal, and I don't know. Apparently, I didn't know that what the deal that he turned down was, and although it was like $8 million, and I said 7, whatever. I think I said 5 by 7 or something like that. I got roasted pretty hard.
Idiot.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's bad. I don't really care. But it was just spitballing, like mainly just judging by Barzal being the highest paid Islander right now. You're probably just not going to have players above that, like that $7 or $8 million amount for forward is probably the max. Just based on the rest of the roster and where everyone else has landed, and Barzal was the exception. Maybe Horvat for 5 or 6 years makes a ton of sense like that, and I think in that time Ratu will grow into an NHL player, and you just have to be prepared to, like, if you think you can actually win, like, you're going to make that trade,
Right.
and you're going to bring somebody in, and he's going to sign. Presumably, that's the only way Lamoriello does this.
Agreed.
I don't know that opens your window, because you're just adding somebody older than 26 to your roster in your top 6. Nelson seems to defy time. Lee seems to defy time, but like that's not going to keep happening. You can't bank on that every single year. You do need to find a way to get younger. Some of that needs to come through. It's fine if Palmieri is on your third line. He's an expensive third liner. But if that third line can stay together for 2 more seasons, that's playing well. That's great. It's really about finding a way to get your top 6 younger, and then adding some real serious potency. And I'm not saying anything that's groundbreaking here. I think this is just the same thing that we've been saying for a long time.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know how comfortable I am with something like that, because I don't know if Bo Horvat makes the team better. There's something going on in the Islanders locker room. I've said this for a long time. That lack of focus, the lack of being able to just like play consistency, like it's something else. That's not a skill problem on this team. You're seeing them score more goals. Even with Pelech out of the lineup, and depleted Colorado lineup as well, but even with Pelech out, it's still a 0-0 game.
Right.
They still only allowed 2 goals against like Vegas only scored 2 goals against them. There's something there, right? Like this it's a better team than maybe their record would even, and it's an okay record. It's a pretty good record here. The mistakes are just really bad mistakes when they do ultimately happen, which is just incredibly frustrating. But yeah, I always wonder what's going to be that real difference maker. Do they need to score more goals every single game, or do they just need to be a better team on a nightly basis?
I think it's one of those things where, and I think they just need to have the puck on their stick more. And the only way that that's going to happen is if they have players who can do that. And,
I don't disagree with that.
Say again?
I don't disagree with that. I think just having the puck in the offensive zone is going to help, and
it's going to change.
Maybe
a ton.
go for it.
They
in the playoffs. God, that would have made such a big difference.
It would make a huge difference, and that's the thing. Like you look at the teams in this league who are the most successful. They have the puck on their stick. They're possessing more than they're chasing, and that's the thing that the Islanders don't really do as much as they should. Matthew Barzal, Brock Nelson, and then it stops there, right? Anders Lee is an excellent complementary player. Kyle Palmieri is a good complementary player. Like they have the complementary players, but they don't have enough of the guys who can possess the puck. And you throw a Timmo Meier into the equation with a Matthew Barzal, suddenly now you have a first line who you can roll out for 23 minutes a night, and in those 23 minutes you have 20 something chances for and 2 against, because they just have the puck. So that's one of those things that needs to happen. I don't think it's and again, not taking anything away from what Andrew Gross wrote. I think it was a excellent idea of a handful of players that he picked out. But I was all for getting an Anthony Duclair a couple seasons ago, but I don't think it's the move now. I think they have Anthony Duclairs. I think they need someone like a Meier or a Horvat or a Patrick Kane, who, and I say that with the tongue in cheek, that can they afford it? But at the same time, I think about the Patrick Kane situation where he picks his own, he's going to be able to pick where he wants to go. The Blackhawks are going to approach him and say, these are the 2 deals that we have. These are the 3 deals we have on the table. Which one of these teams do you want to go to? And according to Jeff Marek, Patrick Kane glows when he talks about Matthew Barzal. So I don't look. He might look at the Rangers. He might look at the Islanders and say, which team do I have the better chance to go to and win? Or, and neither of those are clear cut, right? There's no better chance for the Rangers to win than there is for the Islanders. He might say, I want to play with Panarin again. He might say, I want to play with someone new like Matthew Barzal. It's just a matter of what he's feeling. So I don't want to say it's not a possibility.
It's a good story at the very least. Like,
yeah,
I think and I think Kane can look at, I'm going to go to the Islanders and I can kind of regain my status as one of the league's best, and maybe even stick around for, he's 34. Like, it's not like signing him, and I don't know what that looks like. Again, presumably, even if Chicago kept some salary, which the Islanders would, I think, need them to do, especially if they're going to add somebody in the back end, which might even be the first move that's made. Even though it might not be announced first, just because that's the way that Lemrel likes to work with, he's playing chess with other GMs, whatever the deal, whatever order things come in. I imagine it'll be a forward and a defenseman, just to really lock that down, like some insurance D that's not Robin Salo. Maybe even 2 if they can afford it. I don't like the dollars and cents of it all, not assets. What does Chicago want? If they're going to retain, what does Chicago want for Kane? I'm all for, Galaxy braining this and willing it into existence, right? I think any one of those good players. I don't want to be a party pooper and be like, that's never going to happen. Like, I think that's what the team needs. I think anybody would argue that at this point, they just need that next step. They have on the back end, they have that in Dobson, right? They have a shutdown pair in Pelech and Pulak, and they have this, and and just a very steady Mayfield. They found somebody in Sebastian Aho who can be an every night player for the most part. He's untested in the playoffs, but I think that's not a crazy leap. But then you have Dobson being that scorer.
Yeah.
You might just need to lock it down a little bit more and try to focus on that. You don't need to add anyone crazy. Look at what Aho did to that back end. It made it pretty good. And Romanov as well. Like, how do you just tweak that a little bit on the offense? Like, you need to be deep, and I think they have that, but they're bottom heavy or they're middle heavy. They really just need somebody to kind of put them over and back other teams off. There's just no one intimidating on the team, even Barzal to a degree, right? Because he can't do it himself. And I think other teams recognize that. It's super easy to just go at him and make him sell out either, give the puck away, which the best players in the league give the puck away more than anybody else. And I looked this up recently because I was like, there's no one is giving the puck up more than Barzal. Not the case. He's up there, but so is Leon Draisaitl. So are some of the league's best players.
Right,
So
and that's a numbers thing, right? They receive the most minutes on the ice, so they have the most opportunities to do so, and that's
they
just
have the
the way
puck
it
more.
works. Correct.
So I get it. I'm trying to give him a pass on that. It's frustrating because it seems to lead to better chances against when he does it. It's not like he just gave the puck away in the offensive zone and they had to go 80 feet, or 120 feet away, like whatever the case is. It's like right in the neutral zone or in their own zone or something like that. I'm like, it's just directly leading to chances, and it's aggravating. Either way, they do need a player. I think it's just going to be unacceptable at this point if it's not. That may be where I'm landing. It can't be the offensive equivalent of Shane Gostisbehere. Like, it can't be a Duclair, like you said. It can't
Right.
be. It's got to be a Meier or a Horvat or a Besser or
I think it's two different things if you're talking offensive and defense. If they're gonna acquire a defender like Shane Gostisbehere, maybe it doesn't cost them as much as we might be thinking, right? Because I think he's on an expiring deal. Maybe they can make that happen for on the cheap, but it can't end there. They need someone in the forward group, in the top 6 specifically.
yeah,
And
that's exactly what I mean. Is that if that's their target, is adding even a Chikrin on the back end, like, I think that helps a little bit, but that's
not the goal here.
and that's not even solving your defensive issue, which is being able to lock it down. You really need somebody that to kind of push for the 6th spot a little bit. Even when Pelech
Right.
comes back, you need somebody to kind of push Aho out, essentially. It just has a steady rock defenseman to play alongside Mayfield that can add a 3rd or 4th really strong defenseman. They're shut down and offense, like, they could just use that. Like, that doesn't even solve that problem. So I feel like that's useless. It would be fun, like, if it happened. I just wouldn't expect anything else to happen. And Chikrin's got a lot of time left on his deal. So that's some other, finagling that has to get done in the offseason, which the Islanders have deals they need to sign. They have players that I'm sure they'd like to ship out if possible, which we've seen being kind of difficult for them to do. But yeah, I think they really just need they need to land the big fish. And Kadri's not even a big enough name, frankly. Even Goudreau, like, it's bigger than that. They have to go bigger than that.
Well, Gaudreau would be.
I guess it would have been, but he's not. I don't know. He's not having a great season this year.
It's Columbus. They're also a dumpster fire right now in terms of their injuries. You can't take any stock in what he's done with Columbus. If they would have gotten Johnny Gaudreau, that would have put them over the top, in my opinion. But
you're not wrong.
Of the 3 big fish that we mentioned, Patrick Kane, Timmo Meier, and Bo Horvat, which one of those 3 would you choose if you had the option?
I think it would be, taking some of the other issues aside from Kane off the ice and Chicago and kind of all that stuff, that would certainly be exciting. I don't think it's a slam dunk to work. What you got into my head a little bit is moving Barzal to the wing, whether that's to play with Lee and Nelson, or simply bringing in a center and moving Barzal to the wing, because that might move Wahlstrom down the lineup 1, and then you can move somebody. So Wahlstrom would be the RW2
or 2, yeah.
I know if he fits in with Nelson and Lee, and however that's how it's going to shake out. Barzal becomes right wing 1 with a center, and You just need a left wing
So
player.
your choice is Bo Horvat.
I'm partial to that. I think his age fits with the rest of the team, and that what he's capable of and what he's doing. He would be next to Barzell for 6 years, making up a
Yeah.
random amount of time, and then finding just like a left winger that complements them, and that might be a player like Bavillier. Finally, that might be the line that kind of like puts that all together.
Yeah.
It's either Bailey or Bavillier. One of them has to work, and Bailey's at least a setup guy, and if it's the right line, maybe it just works. Preferably Bavillier, just to keep it younger and quicker, although Bavillier's has been a disaster this season,
Yeah.
frankly. But I think I like the idea because Barzell's been terrible in the dot, at the dot. And moving, if he's going to be the setup player and Horvat can score the goals and be responsible defensively, I think that's kind of where I'm at. And I'd want to see Barzell shoot the puck more too. Like maybe Horvat can set him up a little bit more,
Maybe. Yeah.
and get better opportunities because he's not like, I can understand why Barzell's shooting more because he's running out of space. He's just trying to get the puck to the net. I think that's totally fine because you made that point that he's shooting more than he ever has. But what I'm seeing is some not good shots. Like they're not quality opportunities. So it doesn't seem like it, right? Because just like getting the puck to the net is, I guess, as good. Anything can happen, but his shooting percentage is low. It might be because there's low quality shots, But if you spread out with him, like the defensive responsibility on the other team towards him, and open up the ice a little bit for him, him and Horvat would be, I think, ideal. I mean, a player like Timmo Meier, scoring a bunch of goals, it's not going to be bad. It keeps Barzell at center, and he's natural there, and that's where he's been. There's no adjustment. But I don't know. You kind of got it into my head to do that, and down the right side, center on the right side, they'd be pretty stacked. Frankly, at that point you'd be looking to add a left winger in the offseason if Horvat signs a deal.
Yeah.
Bring, and that doesn't need to be somebody that's going to like set the world on fire. It just needs to be like an Evan Rodriguez that when he was playing in Pittsburgh or something like that, or Jake Gensel, like somebody that just works well with Horvat and Barzell. It doesn't need to be anyone crazy.
Funny enough, I think I'm handpicking Timmo Meier. I think it's better for the team. I know I've banged on the Horvat drum, but I've also hit the
for years, yes.
Yeah, I've also hit the Timmo Meier drum as well. He's on a 40 goal pace right now in San Jose, playing with.
Someone's got to score goals.
So and I'm looking at his analytics now, and he's a really good possession player too. He's always on the positive end of things, on the Sharks. So the Sharks are obviously not playing well this season, and no slight to Logan Couture, he's an excellent player, but Matthew Barzell, in my opinion, is a better player, especially a playmaker than Logan Couture. And I think Logan Couture is an excellent player, but I think Matthew Barzell is just that much better, and I think he would fit so well on his wing. And the Islanders are deep at center, and again, I'm not saying I wouldn't take Bo Horvat. I think like I said, in the past, I think it's a good idea to do that if you're gonna, but I think it's a better idea for Timmo Meier to come in. They're both on expiring deals. They're both the same age, but I think Timmo Meier is just exactly what they've been missing forever.
How old is Meier?
They're both 27. Both Horvat and Timmo Meier are 27. Actually, is Meier 26 still? Yep, he's still 26. He turns 27 actually next season, so he's a year younger than Bo Horvat, if I'm not mistaken.
And that would be excellent if you're gonna bring in somebody like that, and whatever your off-season moves are, Then like I said, you just look for your version of Jake Gensel or something like that, just to play left wing on that top line, and just like make it work. It's not going to be Bavillier. Bavillier and Bailey cannot be on this team next season. But that's a different conversation. But they need somebody to be in that role, where Bavillier presumably should have been able to fit in quite nicely next to Barzell and be a beneficiary of his good play. Um, it's just not working, and he's got another year left. And like maybe they give it a shot, and maybe he performs in the playoffs and is really, moves the needle, and we forget all about this, and he scores the Stanley Cup clinching goal, and that all is well and good, and we kind of just forget about it. But until then, it's super frustrating. Huge game against the Rangers as we wrap up the show here. I know what Chris Botta said, and I think his perspective is absolutely right about every time you think they're one game away from just being completely out of it, they find a way to win their next one. In the same breath, I'll say, or at least I'll ask the question, is this one of their first must-win games of the season, just based on it's going into the break? The Rangers are playing really well. Teams around them are winning. The results of tonight are still unknown. Islanders had a couple of days off. Rangers are playing. Still, they'll just have the one night off. They're playing a really good team in Carolina. Is this one of their first must-win games of the season?
I was sitting there in frustration saying that I hate saying must win, and I wish we could come up with a different term for it. I don't know what
it's
that
very
is.
Important. It's a very important game for this team.
If we're gonna say very important game, I'm going to agree. It is a very important game because they just lost 1-0 to the Avalanche. It's hard for me to say that they proved that they could hang with a team like the Avalanche, especially because they're so injury ridden. They're without Landeskog, McKinnon, like all their horses really, minus Mikko Rantanen and Cal McCarr. It's so you have a Rangers team who's won their last 7, and then you have a Florida team who is angry and clawing their way back into the playoff picture the following night. You want to prove that you can, stop a streak against a hot team like the Rangers. You want to prove that you can rise to the occasion in a big rivalry game. You want to prove that you can compete with some of the best teams in the division. And, it's you might sit there and say, oh, well, they've already beaten the Rangers this season. Haven't they proved that already? But yes, maybe, but you want to prove that you can do it consistently. And again, they're playing the following night as well against the Panthers, like who I said are trying to claw their way back into the playoff picture. And they'll be playing the night before as well in New Jersey. So you want to, take advantage of a team who's are they on the road, or are the Islanders going to them? No, they're on the road, right? So you want to take advantage of a team who's on the road, and maybe a little bit tired from that travel, and played the night before. Right? You want to bank these points. These are crucial points that you need now, because it becomes tougher to bank or claim those points later in the season. So it's not must win because there's a lot of time following these games before Christmas is over and they're back on the ice. But it's super important that they prove that they can stop a streak, win big in a rivalry game. And if not, they can at least take advantage of a team who's on the road and on the back end of a back-to-back.
Big question for the Islanders on Friday against Florida is who the Islanders goalie will be. It could be Corey Schneider. He could get his second start in 2 seasons if Varlamov isn't ready, because he left the game in Vegas, if I'm not mistaken, later into the game, if I'm remembering correctly. And that's a big question mark. There, Sorokin presumably gets the game against the Rangers. That makes sense. But yeah, Varlamov's had a lot of good games against the Rangers, and he's been the starter a lot of the time against that team. Um, and if you think out of the two of those games, you have a better chance of beating Florida than you do the Rangers, you would play Sorokin, your better goalie, against Florida. If Schneider is your backup, though, it changes the dynamic there. Schneider
It's
might
funny.
still get the start against the Rangers, not because they think he'll play better, but the game they think they can actually win is going to be against Florida.
It's funny because you had in the notes earlier in the show who is the most or the most crucial loss of all the injuries, but it wasn't exactly asked. So we'll circle back to that now real quick, and we'll say who's the most crucial injury that the Islanders have right now. And as we're talking about it, I was really torn between Varlamov and Pelech, obviously. But now I'm talking myself into, believe it or not, it's Semyon Varlamov over the number one defenseman because, or arguably one of the Islanders' top defensemen, arguably because when you have a night where you're playing the second of a back to back, you look at Corey Schneider, and although he's been excellent in the AHL and he was really good in his one appearance for the Islanders last season, can you trust it? No, it hasn't been consistent enough at this level, and the whole reason why last year Ilya Sorokin started 9 straight to start the season was because they didn't trust him. And I don't think that they trust him still. Like there's no reason to hand him that trust, right? One start last year doesn't do that for the Islanders. So it's harder to lose out on Semyon Varlamov in this instance than it is to lose out on Pelech because the Islanders defense has stayed afloat. Now they have a back-to-back coming up, and you're wondering, is Varlamov going to be back? And if not, are they going to be in trouble against Florida?
Yeah, it's interesting. A while ago, I had heard that it's not about playing your best goalie against the better team. It's what game do you think you can win? Now, I don't know if that's a strategy for every team, but in the Islanders' case, like I said, Varlamov's played a lot of games against the Rangers, since he's been on the team, and he's had a really good record, which is why I think he keeps playing those games. Sorokin has gotten some as well. The Shesterkin Sorokin rivalry is, I think, a really exciting part of the rivalry now, as like the two teams on the whole. A part of me doesn't really care about that. The Islanders just need to be able to win it, and Varlamov is more often than not give them an opportunity to do that. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. I saw Schneider get called up the other day, with in Colorado, and it got me thinking about the rest of the week, and that's a tough position. So hopefully Varlamov is okay, and it was just precautionary. There was no reason,
Yeah.
if Sorokin was going to start that game anyway, and there was really no serious concern, it makes sense just kind of give him that long break, and maybe even fly him back east and not have to worry about it, and just have him get ready for prepare for Thursday. And before we wrap up, I do want to mention that Soshnikov's contract was terminated, or he's put on waivers to terminate his contract, which opens up a contract spot for the Islanders, I think, which is good, and gets some money off the cap. So that helps as we kind of like having more serious conversations about the trade deadline. What did you make of him? Did somebody like Fashing just come in and totally just steal a spot, and he just became like beyond expendable? Not for even for Bridgeport, he probably didn't want to play there either. But
right, well, and that's the thing. That's exactly what happened, right? Fashion came in, and it was like, holy crap, it's Casey Zizekas Jr. And Simone Holmstrom got an opportunity, and it was like, holy crap, we have another NHL caliber bottom 6 player at our disposal right now. So I think that's exactly what happened. He just fell out of favor, and he fell so far out of favor that, once he got down to Bridgeport, he was willing to play there. But then he saw, Holmstrom get called up. He saw Fashion get called up. He saw the success that they both have had, and he probably said to himself, you know what? I'm further down the depth chart than I'd like to be. And I didn't sign here for this. And, nothing against the Islanders. I don't think it's, a personal thing for him. I think it was just one of those things where he's like, I came here to try and prove myself that I could play in the NHL. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. So I think I'm just going to go home and, continue to do my thing overseas. So
Yeah, it was interesting that that trajectory wasn't expected. I mean, if in the beginning of the season it was Bellows and Soshnikov, I think that's I at the time I didn't think Bellows was a lock either because I thought Soshnikov was kind of giving him a run for his money. There were players like Holmstrom. Fashing certainly wasn't not on my radar at all. I don't think he was on anybody's. Um, so it was interesting how that all shook out. And good on the Islanders, I think, for those fringe players. For as many people think that Lamoriel's making, continually making mistakes, keeping Bailey around and Pavilier around. I think it's a lot harder to get rid of those players, and they are an asset in some degree. You can't just waive one of those players. It's not good for business. As a GM and keeping players that have been around your team for a long time, that's just very disrespectful. But it's just like that's just bad business to do for the team, in general. But it's good that those fringe players they cut ties this season. They didn't keep him around, and as questionable as Ross Johnson is, they clearly see some kind of value in him, and he doesn't play enough games to really truly be a problem. But I guess good on him for kind of like I said, cutting ties with Bellows and
yeah,
Sasha.
good on him for cutting ties, and good on him for calling up a guy like Holmstrom and allowing him to get a shot. And they for a while the question about Holmstrom was he a bust, right? And maybe he's not playing like a first round pick, but he's at least a serviceable player. And good
He's
on
still
him for
young,
finding out. Yeah, still young.
so there's time. He's shown a lot of flash of speed, and there's other times where he just looks a little lost out there, and like I don't know, like a cartoon character, like things are spinning all around him. But other times he scored his first goal the other night.
Yeah,
Um, and that's good. That might just be a little bit of that, like get that confidence. He has 1 or 2 assists, so he's positionally most of the time I think is okay, and I think he's a still pretty small player, in a league that it's not as tough as it used to be in that traditional sense, but players are strong. Um,
he's
you,
not
you,
he's not super small. 6'2", 205.
yeah, but he's not. He doesn't play like it. You see him kind of just get knocked around. He's not able to kind of dictate the physical part of the game. And even if
Right.
that's not part of his game, you can see Barzell be able to hold players off. Holmstrom doesn't seem to have that yet.
That makes
And
sense.
this is his first time um really getting this length of a shot uh at the NHL level. So I don't expect him to just do it, but you're playing other players in the A. That's not an easy league to play in either. And he wasn't blowing anybody away there, so it's not surprising that he's just getting his first NHL goal and um, trying to figure it all out. But he's young, and there's time to figure it out. And he really isn't the answer long term. Like this season, um, he's plugging a hole where 2 other players should have been playing better, and now he's kind of filled that role for now, and maybe eventually he is a third line player for the Islanders. But that might be a little further down the line. Before we wrap up, you have anything left here?
No, I mean, I was just going to comment on how like good it's been to see a guy like Fashion come in, a little bit of electricity, a little bit of that I what we used to see in the fourth line. He's brought that, and he looks really good. And I'm not sitting here saying that he's a new staple down there, but if it comes to a point where Clutterbuck decides he can't play any further, you could see a situation where maybe he does stick around a little longer, and maybe they give him a 1-year deal and keep him around for a little bit to provide that. Hopefully that kind of play that he continues to bring doesn't go away with a little bit of comfortability if he gets a deal. But regardless, it's been good to see, a guy like Fasching who, when the Islanders signed him, we were all like, what the hell is this? Work out.
Yeah, I that would be a great transition. Zekas is around, quite a bit longer.
Yeah.
It seems to have energized him as well, which is great. Having both of those players there, and then again, you're just finding a left winger. If Martin's also found his stride again,
Yeah.
after recovering from an injury. So like the three of them look fine. That's far from the Islanders' problem, frankly. So if they can kind of reinvent that line a little bit, I think that'd be great. But yeah, I love seeing Fasching kind of get a couple goals here and bring that identity back that we know. I think the rest of the team just needs to follow suit.
Yeah, he scored a really good goal the other night too. That was really pretty.
Yeah. I think that just about does it then. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Nassman Hockey. You can find James' work at The Fourth Period. Ignore all the devil stuff. And you can find my work at The Hockey Writers. James did not like my joke there to close it out with The Fourth Period. Make sure to subscribe to Isles Fix. They are going paid, so do that soon and get in on the ground floor. It's $5 a month, still daily newsletters, and you get to be put in the running for raffles and different giveaways and things like that. So definitely worth your while to check that out. Team over there does a great job. James, our last show of the year. Bring us home, buddy.
Until next time, all. Let's go Islanders.